Thank you all for being here. This is a very important election, and we're so glad that you care and that you're here tonight. Thank you. I'm Diana Williams. I'm the CEO of the Woodland Hills Tarzana Chamber of Commerce, and I want to thank the Canoga Park Neighborhood Council, and I believe Bill is right. There's Bill. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Canoga Park Neighborhood Council, for co-sponsoring our event tonight. Also, I'd like to just tell you a little bit about the Valley Regional Forum. The Woodland Hills Tarzana Chamber of Commerce has a very active, strong government affairs committee led by Sean McCarthy. And earlier last year, these two gentlemen here founded the Valley Regional Forum for our chamber, and they've been doing a magnificent job with lots of substantive debates and propositions and things like that. So I want to thank them and give them a hand for doing a great job. Okay, so our moderators tonight are Mr. Sean McCarthy and Tony Michelman. And with no further ado, I'd like to go ahead and get this started. Thank you.
And thank you, Diana. Can you hear me okay? All right. Again, my name is Sean McCarthy. I'm here with my partner, Tony Michelman. This is the fourth or fifth, I think this is the fifth edition of the the Valley Regional Forum. I want to welcome you this evening. This is a very important debate that we have here tonight. These two candidates are running for the 45th Assembly District. The election is next Tuesday, the 19th of November. Just a little bit in terms of how the evening is going to proceed. The questions have been organized and arranged based on the most topical issues that will be facing somebody who's entering the state assembly. And so we have 15 or more questions that we will be asking if time allows. I'd just like to go over a little bit about some of the statistics about the area so that we understand the area that's covered by the 45th Assembly District. It consists of Calabasas, Hidden Hills, Canoga Park, Encino, Northridge, Reseda, West Hills, Winnetka, Woodland Hills, Bell Canyon, and part of Chatsworth. The population as of 2010 in this area, and we know it's either gone up or down, but it's probably still, these numbers are probably still pretty good, 467,766, of which 280,620 are of voting age. There are 257,123 registered voters in the district. This discussion is going to go about 45 minutes at this point. Maybe we can stretch it out a little bit, but about 45 minutes. We hope that you find this evening's discussion insightful. Now I want to turn it over to my associate, Tony Michelman, to introduce the candidates. Tony.
Good evening, everybody. We started with 11 candidates in this election, and we're down to two very fine candidates, Matt DeBobny and Susan Shelley. We'd like to thank the other 9 candidates that participated in the election and brought diversity and open ideas to our community, and we were enriched for their participation. So we're going to begin the festivities with 2 minutes opening statements by each candidate. Then we'll have a series of questions. There'll be some crosstalk between the candidates. We're wide open, and we're going to turn it over to them for the most part. So let's start with Mr. DeBobny, if you would, a 2-minute opening statement.
Thank you to both our moderators for doing this. Thank you to the Woodland Hills Chamber of Commerce. I'm very honored to have their president's endorsement, Paul Lawler. Thank you to everyone for being here today to take part in a very important civic engagement. Unfortunately, in the primary, only 10% of eligible voters turned out to vote. I hope we'll have a much higher turnout this time. My name is Matthew DeBobny. For the last 9 years, I've had the great honor of serving as Congressman Brad Sherman's chief deputy here in the West San Fernando Valley. I'm honored to have Congressman Sherman's mother, Miss Lane Sherman, here today. Thank you. I'm running to serve in the Assembly because I believe there's a lot of work that needs to be done to solve the problems facing our community and facing our state. I'm a product of the community college system, the Cal State, and a UC school, UCLA, where I proudly graduated with a limited amount of debt, on time, and was able to go into public service. Too many of our young people aren't able to take advantage of these systems. We have to make it more affordable and more accessible for our young people to get a college education. We have to improve our economy. Even though things are getting better in the state, the housing market's up, we're starting to get employers hiring again, there's a lot of work to do, especially here in the Valley. We need to expand the film tax credit to keep good filming jobs here in the Valley and across the state. We need to reform CEQA to allow good developments to go through to improve our housing needs and make sure that we don't have frivolous lawsuits keeping economic development from happening. And we need to make sure we're looking at all the regulations on the books to make sure that they're not out of date or duplicate. We need to make sure that we reinvent California, reinvest in our future, and make sure that we're the leaders for the next century. One of the things I'm most proud of is being a true believer in making sure that we're a bellwether state. And that's why I'm so proud that California is leading the way on Covered California, which is far outperforming the national program in terms of performance, sign-ups, and providing needed healthcare services to our friends, neighbors, and loved ones throughout the state. So I hope you will consider voting for me for Assembly, because I'm not looking just to prevent things in the state, I'm looking to get things done and solve problems for our community and our state. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Shelley.
Well, I'm going to stand up because I'm not as tall as Matt. My name is Susan Shelley, and I would not be in politics if things were okay in California. Things are not okay in California. We all know people who are getting out of college, can't find the kind of jobs they need to pay the student loans that they took out in an optimism burst that said, yes, I'll be able to, this is America, this is California, I'll be able to get the great job. Where is it? Where is the great job? So many jobs are leaving California. So many businesses are leaving California. So many businesses are cutting people down to part-time, cutting the hours of the part-time workers, making it harder and harder to just pay your bills, let alone live well, go to restaurants, buy a new car, and enjoy life. It is so much more difficult to just live in California than it used to be. I've lived in Woodland Hills since 1975. I've never seen it this bad. And that's why I'm in politics. In November, the Democratic Party won a supermajority, 2/3, a veto-proof supermajority in the Assembly and the Senate. And this is what they did with it. They immediately started introducing measures to attack your property tax bill. They want to attack Proposition 13 and make it easier to raise property taxes by lowering the vote needed to pass bonds and parcel taxes from 2/3 to 55%. When bonds and parcel taxes pass, the cost is added to the bottom of your property tax bill over and over again for schools, for streetlights, for emergency services. And now, if these were to pass out of the Assembly, they need 2/3. If these were to pass, then infrastructure bonds, library bonds, transportation bonds, parcel taxes, community development bonds, and bonds for any general purpose all would pass with just 55% of the vote. Many more of them will pass, and after every election, the bottom of your property tax bill will be a little bit longer to pay for all of these things for politicians to stand next to and take a picture with.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you very much for your opening statement. I'm going to start with the first question, and this was all over the newspapers today. Several news outlets, including the Sacramento Bee, the Los Angeles Times, and Long Beach Press-Telegram, are reporting that Senator Ron Calderon is claiming that he was asked by federal prosecutors to inform against Senator Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg of Sacramento and Senator Kevin De Leon of Los Angeles regarding illegal campaign contributions and other criminal activities. Given the fact that this has happened and that this is a widening investigation, what does it say about politicians in Sacramento? And for no other reason, most of the people in Sacramento today are Democrats, they're not Republicans. So what does it say about the leadership in Sacramento? And how do you see this, the impact of these criminal investigations impacting the election that we're looking forward to next November? Either one of you, I guess we can start with Susan.
I'll take that. This is a problem of transparency. When you have one-party control of government, there is no transparency, and you can make deals in back rooms. And when you can make deals in back rooms, people who have industries and people who have concerns about California are going to make donations to the people who can make those decisions to help them or hurt them. And if there's no transparency, if there's no checks and balances, then there's no way to stop it. Just to give you an example of one budget procedure, 37 spot bills were passed as part of the budget. And what these are is this is a blank piece of legislation with a number on it and the words "to be filled in later." And the Assembly passed 37 of these blank pieces of paper, sent them to the Senate. They came back with something written on it by lobbyists and staffers, perhaps as a result of campaign contributions in part. And then they were passed in the Assembly with a straight up or down vote, no hearings, no amendments. Well, that's not good government, no matter how you look at it. That is an opportunity for criminal activity. It's an opportunity for undue influence, and I'm not surprised that we see it. It's an abuse of power.
And Matt, do you have any thoughts on this? I mean,
I don't think either party has a monopoly on good ideas, and I don't think either party has a monopoly on bad behavior. And I think that if the accusations against Senator Calderon are true, he should immediately resign. He should be put to the full extent of the law punished. And there is no tolerance, in my opinion, for any type of behavior like that for an elected official. When you're elected to serve in public office, it's an honor, it's a privilege, and it's a responsibility. And your vote should never be for sale, and you should never put your own personal financial interests in the same room or the same decision-making process as conducting the public's business. So I take these charges very seriously. You know, the Daily News, when they endorsed me not only in the primary, but in the general election, and I am the only candidate endorsed by the Daily News in the general election, said that I'm a good government type of Democrat. And I do have concerns with government, as Susan's expressed. There's a number of things that I think we need to make our government more efficient, more transparent, and we need to work to improve the bipartisan atmosphere in Sacramento. But that being said, I still believe the government can do good. And for every situation where you have a Ron Calderon or another type of investigation in a politician who's made a mistake, I think there's a lot of good that came out of Sacramento this last year. When you look at some of the bipartisan bills that came out of Sacramento, when you look at some of the progress we made in our economy, when you look at the fact that 5 years ago when we did have a Republican governor, we were making massive cuts across the board to education, to infrastructure, to social services. And now we're reinvesting in our state's education systems, reinvesting in a lot of the social services, the safety net and infrastructure. And we went from a $42 billion deficit, and yes, we have a long way to go, and there's a lot of things we need to fix. But this year we had a $1 billion surplus, and we're building on that. So yes, the Calderon situation is a black eye on Sacramento. It's a black eye for the profession of public service, and it should not be tolerated. But I also think California is moving in the right direction in a lot of ways. And I look forward to going to Sacramento, not just to be someone that's looking to prevent things or stop things, but to get things done, to make things better, and to improve the climate of Sacramento to make sure that people have more trust in their elected officials.
thank you. Did you want to follow up at all?
I would just like to clarify, this idea that our budget is in surplus. Among the things that they are not counting is $4.5 billion a year for the next 30 years that the California Teachers Pension Fund is underfunded by its own account. $4.5 billion a year, that's off the table. They're not looking at that when they look at the balanced budget. CalPERS, the public employee pensions, also underfunded. That's off the table. They're not looking at it. It's too far in the future. They don't have to think about it, but you're on the hook for that. You're on the hook. And the other thing that they're not counting is the amount of money we've had to borrow from the federal government to pay unemployment benefits. Why? Because there are so many people unemployed that the money paid in by employers doesn't cover the benefits we owe. So we're borrowing money from the federal government. And all three of those things, billions and billions and billions of dollars, off the table. And they are, quote, reinvesting the money that's coming in from Prop 30, a temporary tax. 7 years, 12 years, it's going to sunset. And that money is now being, quote, reinvested in permanent long-term expenses, entitlements.
And thank you, Susan. Thank you. Tony?
It's the topic of the day, and Matt has already mentioned it, health care. And as of today, 59,000 Californians have signed up for health insurance under the Affordable Care Act. And that's roughly half of all the people now covered by the ACA nationwide. At the same time, it's reported that approximately 1 million Californians have been notified that their insurance has been canceled. So my question is, what went wrong, and what do we need to do to make this law successful going forward? Matt?
Well, I think we should focus on the California model today, especially because of time constraints. Obviously, I think the governor and the state legislatures did the right thing by choosing to give California and the elected officials in California the ability to serve their constituents and create our own exchange here It gives us more accountability, it gives us more control, and it gives us more flexibility to make changes. And we did see a few glitches in our system in the beginning. But if you look at the website that we have covered California right now, it's going pretty smoothly. There's still work to be done, but you have over 60,000 people that's already registered for health care, many of them for the first time. Their health care plans will have preventative medicine, will have mental health coverage, which provides great access to new types of treatment that has a lot of benefits to society beyond just basic medicine. But you also have 72,000 people that were now deemed eligible for Medi-Cal. And in California, because we didn't have a governor that was trying to make a political point, we'll now get more resources from the federal government to help pay for these healthcare costs for our citizens. And I think with any new program, it's going to take time and more people will sign up as we get closer to the date. There's still great flow of traffic. When you look at the amount of traffic that's been going to our website, people that have seen if they were eligible or not, people that are looking at the plans, people that have been deemed eligible, is much higher than the national average. So as people get more comfortable with the website, as people look and see what their options are, you're going to see more and more people sign up. So I think California is on the right track. It doesn't mean we won't need to make fixes and changes. I'm sure when Social Security and Medicare were implemented, there was changes that had to be made over time to them. But I think when you look at the options we had, and this isn't necessarily a bigger issue in terms of the federal discussion, but it wasn't a discussion between keeping the system we had and changing to this new system. We had a spiraling system going down that was unsustainable. And so we needed to do something. I think California did the right thing. I wish more governors in other states would have done the same thing California wanted to do and create their own exchange. So I look forward to working to help make it the most efficient exchange in the nation. I hope that California can be a bellwether for the rest of the country. And I hope because of the success of California being able to insure millions of people that have never had insurance before or have lost their insurance during the recession, that other states will take that mantle, move forward, and help provide better insurance coverage to their citizens as well.
Thank you. Susan? Affordable Health Care Act.
Seriously? Seriously? It's all just fine? Seriously?
I didn't say that.
Time does not permit a listing of all the problems with the Affordable Care Act. Let's just look at one narrow category, the people you mentioned who lost their health insurance. These were people who were paying health insurance premiums. They bought a policy, they liked the policy, they paid for the policy, they weren't bothering anybody. They had their doctors, they had their care, they were happy. Now, their policy has been canceled. What they can get is much more expensive. Their doctors are not necessarily taking it. And the government says to them, don't worry, it's not more expensive because you're going to get a taxpayer's subsidy. Did we need to do that? They were happy. We didn't have to pay for it. We could have done just the pre-existing condition bill. We could have done just that problem and addressed pre-existing conditions and the problem of paying for and providing insurance to people who are in that unfortunate situation which could happen to any of us at any moment. But we didn't. We threw everything up in the air and it all came down in pieces. Year after year, we're finding out all of these problems. Rates have gone up. Businesses are cutting their employees down to part-time so they don't have to do this. The compliance costs are tremendous. It's a terrible mess. It's a terrible mess, and it's causing grave damage to our medical system because doctors are retiring. You probably have seen this yourself. I know 3 or 4 in the last several weeks who have retired rather than work under all of this. All of this. No idea whether they'll be compensated for the services they're providing or at what rate. It's chaos. It should be repealed. We should start again with a bill that covers pre-existing conditions. We should attack these problems one at a time so we know what the unintended consequences are and we don't go down this path of throwing everyone's life into chaos just to prove a point about
Susan.
big government.
Thank you very much.
Can I have a 10-second rebuttal?
Sure. Yeah, very quickly, please.
10-second rebuttal. I think it's important to remember that, unfortunately, the California State Legislature does not get a vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act at the federal level. And what California and other states face with a decision where we're going to just be part of the federal plan, which is having tremendous difficulty right now, and I don't think we need to rehash that. And I do believe that the president made the right decision today to make sure that the promise is kept to people to be able to keep their plans and their doctors. But that wasn't the question. The question was for California. And as a member of the state legislature, it appears that my opponent would have voted not to take part in having California create its own exchange, which is much more successful and gives a much better service to the citizens of California than the federal plan is obviously appearing to give.
Thank you. That was the longest 10 seconds in the history of
And I'm
mankind.
glad
But that's
we
okay.
settled that.
Yeah. I'm going to skip to another question here, and this time I'd like to start with Matt. For the first time in nearly 20 years, the United States has produced more oil than it imported from foreign sources. Tens of thousands of Californians are employed in oil exploration, refining, and transportation industries. Recent studies have shown that California has enough oil reserves to power the nation's needs for the next 100 years. There are many in state government, right or wrong, that disdain oil, but this is an undeniable truth. How do you see the future of oil exploration and production in the state? What do you see as the upside and the downside of oil production?
I think, obviously, when you talk about energy needs, it's a very complicated issue. I think whatever we can do to limit our usage of fossil fuels is good for not only our environment, but our foreign policy. When you look at how often we've had to rely on Middle Eastern oil and the not only economic difficulties that's caused us, but the foreign policy issues that's created over the last 30 years, whatever we can do to reduce not only fossil fuel consumption, but also foreign oil consumption is a good thing. I believe that we should have an aggressive approach to, be able to use our own resources in a combination with using new technology to discover renewable resources. That's why I think when you look at SB 4 is a great example of a bipartisan bill that came out of a compromise. We have Fran Pavley, who's an unquestioned leader in the environmental causes, push forward regulations on fracking, but that still allows fracking to continue in the state, that allows California to use fracking as an economic incentive or an economic growth industry to bring resources to the market, but it also takes into consideration environmental concerns with what's going into our soil, what type of geological concerns could come from fracking, and allows us to have a little bit of regulation in an industry that before hadn't been regulated, but allows it to keep going forward. Okay. So I think we need that kind of approach, a moderate approach where we say we need to obviously look at any opportunity we can to use domestic resources, but we also look to the future, because California has always been a bellwether in this type of industry as well, and we need to be the ones that have the patents and have the new technology going forward in our state. And a great example is Solar City here in Chatsworth. It's a new solar plant that's providing not only good paying jobs in our community, but also renewable energy as well.
Thank you. Susan, same question.
Solar City was built with your tax dollars. That's a heavily subsidized industry that, if I'm not mistaken, has not yet, Solar City, I think, has not yet turned a profit. And it's heavily subsidized with your tax dollars, which is perhaps fine and perhaps not fine. I think we need to pay more attention to affordability of energy. We've talked a lot in California about renewable energy. We haven't talked very much about affordable energy. And in my opinion, we've gone too far down this path. And it's based on old assumptions. In the 1970s, if you're old enough to remember the 1970s, and I'm sorry to say that I am, we had the belief that we were running out of fossil fuels. We were running out of natural gas during the Carter administration, and they made a lot of policy choices based on the premise that we were running out of fossil fuels, and then it turned out that was wrong. But we still have a lot of these assumptions in the law, and we're still taking pictures next to windmills and solar plants saying this is the future. Well, that actually may be the past. Solar and wind may be the past. We may be past that. We may be at the point where we can use our technology to safely extract fossil fuels from California and live much better at a much lower cost. Currently, because of Assembly Bill 32, written by Fran Pavley, we are paying 6.5% a year increases in our DWP bills because of a mandate to use more and more renewable fuel. We used to be, in 2006, with the standard, the target was 20%. Utilities had to sell 20% of their electricity from renewable fuel sources. The law in 2006 changed it to 33% by the year 2020. And so every year, all the utilities in California have to sign these long-term contracts with wind and solar companies to provide for this mandate. And it's making your bills go up. You're paying for that. Now, sure, we could be a bellwether. We're setting a good example for the world. But what are we really accomplishing for the climate if we're the only people doing this? They're not doing it anywhere else.
And thank you very much. Would you like a 1-minute follow-up on that, Matt?
I mean, by that logic, we'd still be using kerosene, and Edison wouldn't be a household name. I think sometimes you have to move forward for the progress that will come with that future technology. Now, that being said, we should be aware that people are hurting and paying their DWP bills, and we should do everything we can to minimize that. And we should look to make sure that we are, using the resources we have here in California. But I don't think we should do that at the complete expense of all environmental damage. That's why I think a bill like SB 4 is a great compromise that came out of Sacramento, where it allows us to continue to frack in the state to get these natural resources out, but does so in a way that prevents an environmental disaster. So, when you look at the progress going forward, I don't think it's mutually exclusive to say we're going to, look to get every resource we can out of our state, but we're also going to push forward with new technologies that's going to help us go to a renewable future. And we're already going there. How often, many of us have seen these new Teslas on the road all the time. By my opponent's logic, we would just continue to use gasoline indefinitely and never look for what's next.
And thank you very much.
All right, we're going to switch topics to education here. And Matt, you're a product of the community college system.
am.
Recently, Governor Brown signed a bill that allows higher tuition to be charged by community colleges and state universities for classes in high demand. Does this strategy help or hurt students graduate on time? And does the new two-tiered pricing system discriminate against poor students?
So I think that's a very thoughtful question. And I am a product of a Cal State, a community college, and graduate from UCLA. Before I answer, I'm going to do something most people would tell me you never can do as a candidate. I'm going to say I'm not quite sure yet. I really don't know. I have thoughts on both good and bad on this situation, and I'll make this brief. But I have most of my campaign being worked on by community college students, Pierce, Valley, Mission College students. Many of them are Pierce, Valley, and Mission College students. They're going to 2 and 3 community colleges to get classes. It's taking them 3 and 4 years to get a basic transferable amount of classes to go to a Cal State and UC if they can find a spot in one of our UCs or Cal States because of the impact the budget cuts have had over the last 4 or 5 years. So if you told me that this plan would, across the board, allow students of all economic backgrounds to be eligible to get a class to be able to get that one or two extra classes to get that to be able to transfer a year or two quicker, then I'd be for it. But if this becomes a system of haves versus have-nots, and students with more resources or who are blessed to come from a family with more resources are able to buy classes that then negatively impact students who don't have that luxury of having the extra resources to pay for that, then I'm against it. Because we don't need a two-tiered system of education in this country. So in my mind, the jury's still out. I need to do a little bit more research on it. I'm not trying to give an answer that's not addressed to the question. I'm just trying to be thoughtful on this because I really don't know. If it proves to be the latter, I'm for it. But if it proves to be a system where we create a two-tier system that allows students with more resources to get classes and those without, it ends up causing them to a further delay, I'm against it.
Thank you. Susan, education, community colleges.
I would say I'm against it now because it does create a two-tier system. It absolutely does. And the reason that they're doing this is they're starved for revenue. And there are too many people trying to get into the community colleges versus how much money we have to provide those classrooms and those teachers for them. And in the UC system, the schools are recruiting. They never used to do that. They're recruiting in other states to get the out-of-state tuition. And those are spots that aren't available for California students, so they're pushed down to the community colleges. Everybody's trying to get the right education for the right job. Nobody knows what the right job is because there are no jobs. And one of the reasons there are no jobs is because California is standing on its own oxygen hose and driving businesses to other states. And we're doing that with energy costs. We're doing that with workers' compensation being too expensive and mismanaged. We're doing that with the lawsuit climate here, where every year the legislature is introducing different bills that make it easier to sue a business for something. And while they may not pass, they may never become law, it's still a problem because if you're a business thinking of expanding or locating in California, you're looking at that. You're looking at this job killer bill list and thinking, well, if these things pass, I'm dead. So it's a problem. We have to look at California's economy as the source of revenue for the whole social safety net, including education. If the economy grows, there's money for everything. And if the economy doesn't grow and people can't find jobs and they're not paying income tax, then it's cannibalism all the way down. And that's where we are.
Thank you, Susan.
Next question is really a Los Angeles question, but I'd like to ask it of you anyhow because here you are. Los Angeles is undertaking an ambitious plan to revitalize an 11-mile stretch of the Los Angeles River from Griffith Park to a point just south of downtown Los Angeles. Skeptics see this as less of an environmental project and more of a real estate development project. The estimated costs could be between, under the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers recommended project plan, an estimated $115 million, while the City of Los Angeles preferred plan, this is the one that the governor took to Washington a week ago, is $1 billion. The Army Corps plan would require 3/4 of the cost of the project to be paid from local funds, meaning taxes, bonds, and fees. How do you feel about this project? And I'm going to start with you, Susan. And if you can, just elaborate.
Well, I'd like to know why they're doing it now. It doesn't seem like Los Angeles is in very good shape to be taking on more debt or more fees or charging people for something that sounds like a project that's beautification and not something that is absolutely essential.
I can tell you the project has been touted as an environmental project. And that's what the Army Corps of Engineers is envisioning.
Well, let me ask you, is this a cleanup project of something?
This is a $114 million reworking of the flood control system that goes from Griffith Park to the south side of Los Angeles.
Can I ask you, was it the governor that took that to the White House last
No,
month, or the mayor? I think you said the governor.
Mayor Garcetti. I'm sorry, I said Mayor Garcetti.
You know, this is obviously a city issue. I must admit, I've been focused mostly on federal and state issues for the last couple months. I'm obviously aware of the situation. We work closely with the Army Corps of Engineers. That being said, I know there's a number of issues involved here. This is obviously, I do believe it's an environmental issue. I also believe it has to do with the flood control channel situation, but it's also a development issue. They obviously want to beautify the area and bring in, obviously, probably new businesses and new ability to have developments along the river and new recreational facilities. So, you know, obviously the people that are making those decisions are mostly at the city council level, and they're going to have to be accountable to their constituents, and they're going to have to go before voters to make sure this is a worthy project. Now, I can't speak to it because I don't know enough about this project firsthand, so I don't want to, give an exact yes or no on it. But clearly, this is obviously something that the city council is going to have to be accountable for when you're spending that kind of money.
It doesn't seem like a good time to come to the taxpayers of Los Angeles and ask them to spend more money on this.
Thank you very much.
That being said, if this is coming from federal money, I do feel like anytime California can get its fair share from the federal government,
yeah.
that's a good thing.
Of course.
We pay the federal taxes too.
There's an emotional issue that it's a hot button issue. People have been talking about it quite a bit lately. That's the transgender law that allows children to select restroom facilities based on self-identification, and that's on the way to becoming qualified ballot initiative. I'd like to know if you support this or you don't, but in a bigger sense, do you see this broadening of cultural issues in general as essentially divisive or necessary?
Does anyone start?
Matt, why don't you take a shot?
You know, obviously, whenever you have an issue like this, it's going to be controversial. But when you look at the amount of suicides from young people that would classify themselves in that category, obviously it's something to take seriously. Now, I wasn't part of the legislature, obviously, nor was my worthy opponent here during these debates or hearings. I wasn't privy to all the information or research done. And I must admit, I'm not an expert on this bill. That being said, I think there needs to be a place where someone, a young person, can feel comfortable. And there also needs to be an opportunity for people that wouldn't feel comfortable in that situation to have a bathroom that they would feel comfortable in as well. So having maybe individual bathrooms where it's single occupancy, like most restaurants or businesses have, or locker rooms like that in addition to this would be a good thing. I'd have to look at it more closely. That being said, I think it was an opportunity for us to make sure we're reaching out to a group of students who felt left out, who felt that obviously bullying was a big issue that was causing them great grief, and I think that's a good thing. And also, there's something we need to remember. LA Unified School District and also the San Francisco Unified School District already have this law in place. And there was never any incidents or abuses to this law in either one of those school districts that I could find. It's already hard enough to be a young person in high school. I think we all remember what it's like. I don't think many people are going to try to take advantage of this situation or use it for a less than worthy cause. And if they are, I hope teachers and administrators will be in a position to stop that. So obviously it's a very difficult issue, but when you look at the amount of young people that are struggling with their gender identity and the opportunity there to correct that, we might need to make a few fixes here and there or provide new facilities within institutions to make sure everyone feels comfortable. But there clearly is an epidemic with suicides and bullying in local high schools, and we need to prevent
Susan,
that.
your thoughts on this?
I certainly share the concern about teen suicide. That is a very serious issue. It seems to me that the easy way to fix this problem is with the words self-identified. I think what parents are concerned about is they don't want pranksters once people know about this law, the children know about this law, the opportunity is there for people, at least it seems potentially, it seems to parents, the opportunity is there for pranksters to make very awkward and difficult situations for young boys and young girls, and we don't want that. So it seems to me that the solution is to not have it completely self-identified, but to have some sort of counselor, teacher, doctor, someone involved who's an adult who can sign off that this is a person who has this gender issue and wishes to identify with the other gender. It just seems to me that self-identified for little kids is kind of a problematic thing.
Thank you.
Yesterday, the Contra Costa Times reported on the California Senate Transportation Committee hearing into the high cost of mega public infrastructure projects. Some of those testifying said of the 157 bridges and tunnels built in the state between 1919 and 2010, the cost rose an average of 34%, or cost overrides were averaging 34%. The estimates were low in 9 out of 10 cases. The high-speed rail project may in fact cost Californians as much as $350 billion instead of the $68 billion that was quoted when the enabling legislation was passed by the voters. One recommendation among many was that the commission employ outside people with no financial stake in the projects to conduct mandatory cost-benefit analysis on every project. In light of these facts, do you support or oppose the California high-speed rail project, and what changes would you make to the project at this time?
Can I go first?
Yes, you may. Absolutely.
Cancel the bullet train. $350 billion. $350 billion. Do we need this? We could buy Southwest Airlines and fly everybody back and forth wherever they wanted to go. $350 billion. We don't need a bullet train. This is just silly. This is just silly. This is about campaign contributions to engineering, from engineering firms to politicians. This is about everybody suing everybody else over right-of-way and extortion over land rights and all of this. It's just not necessary. We don't need it. It serves the interests of the politicians who are pushing it, but it does not serve your interests, and it should be canceled.
Matt?
You know, I'm very disappointed in some of the processes that have gone forward in the high-speed rail train. I think that clearly the budget situation, and there's been a lack of transparency and really a lack of leadership on it. That being said, if we followed my worthy opponent's script, we would not have a world-class public university system in this state. We would not have the freeway system, while crowded and in need of repair and updating. We would not have that freeway system in this state. You know, my great-grandfather's generation, who was someone that came from Iowa in the 1920s as a bricklayer and came to this state to find work and help build the University of California, Los Angeles as a bricklayer. And my grandfather, who was in the building trades, had helped build major projects. Our fathers and grandfathers' generations and grandmothers and great-grandmothers' generations built up this state, our infrastructure, our aqueducts, our communities, our universities, our transportation systems. Not because of instant gratification, not because they were going to enjoy all of it in their lifetime, but because they knew that it was the right thing to do for future generations. So while I have great concerns over the administration of the high-speed rail, and the costs clearly have to come down, and there clearly has to be a public-private partnership to continue the funding going forward, or it won't get built. I think that California needs to think big. That's our history. And to connect the state in a way that would open up new economic activity throughout every corner of the state. People can laugh at that, but what if you could get from Riverside to Los Angeles in 40 minutes on a high-speed train? You know, that might be funny to you, but that seems like real economic activity in the waiting. And so I look forward to being part of a legislature that will demand efficiency, demand accountability, demand transparency, but also think big and look to solve big issues.
Think big,
And I thank you. I thank you. Hang on just a second. I really would appreciate it if the audience would refrain from laughing and whatnot. We're taking this very seriously. So please respect the people that are here, respect the audience members, And please show respect for one of these two people, because they will be your state assembly member in a week. So,
I'd like to
Susan.
answer the question, but I have to go feed my horse and refill my kerosene lamp. So, you know, in 1968, the national unemployment rate was 3.6. 3.6. We could afford a lot more stuff. We could afford more stuff in the post-war boom. We could afford the interstate highway system, which, by the way, was considered part of the Defense Department to defend us against a possible Russian invasion. So you can pay for big projects if you have revenue coming in. This is not the time to go picking out giant things to do. You're paying for all of this. You're paying for this. And when there is no money for schools and they're spending money on bullet trains, you're losing out on education so that they can take a picture next to a big shiny object and say, we're a bellwether state, and look, we have something cooler than China. China's not a free country. China can spend its whole economic wealth on government projects, and they have a one-child policy because it's not a free country. We are a free country. And if we were a little bit freer, our economy would be growing. We should not go down the path of more government control and the government telling us what we should be spending our money on.
Susan,
like
thank
that.
you. Thank you very much.
Well, here's a topic that you both can agree on or not. Road repair. Recent estimate from the city of Los Angeles places the cost at $3 billion to repair 30% of our city streets. In November of 2014, Los Angeles voters will likely be asked to tax themselves to repair the city streets. Among the following, what do you believe is the best method to finance street repair? A bond measure that places the burden on property owners? A sales tax, which spreads the burden? How would you feel about seeking legislation to adjust the Measure R, the half-cent sales tax, to finance road repairs? Susan?
Once again, this is a question of priorities. What are they spending your money on right now that's more important than streets? Here's how this works. They let the potholes grow and grow and grow, and then they tell you, look how much you're spending to fix your car. You're actually further ahead if you pay for the bond issue on your property tax bill than you would be replacing your wheels every 6 months. This is not good government. They are not prioritizing the budget. They take all the important stuff and they say, we have to have bond issues to pay for libraries and transportation and infrastructure. We have to do and meanwhile, they're spending your money on a bullet train that you don't need. And all of these things are a higher priority, but you won't vote the money for the stuff they want to spend it on, so they take the money out of the schools, out of all of this, and then they come to you for tax increases for the really important stuff. This is an example of bad government policy, and it should be changed. We could prioritize the current budget, and the streets should be repaired out of the general fund revenue. It's a priority of government to repair and maintain the infrastructure. It shouldn't be considered an ups and extras kind of thing, that it's optional, and if the taxpayers don't decide to pay extra for it, we're not going to do it. That's not good government.
Matt, should this be a priority?
Clearly, it should be a priority, and it's a safety issue, obviously, too. And I think that we should definitely look at using Measure R funds for this. But we should also, if we're going to put it up for the voters to decide on, I believe we should do it as a sales tax and share the burden across the board. We all use the roads. You know, I was a homeowner, I'm now a renter. So I think we need to look at a situation where it should be something that is going to be up for the vote. It should be obviously something that we should all share in the sacrifice. That being said, I do think it's something that we have to take seriously. It's not just potholes. It's something that concerns us when we're on the roads. And it could be a life or death situation depending on how bad of a situation our roads are getting into.
Okay. And I'm going to direct this next question to Matt, and then Susan, you can follow up on this. The San Diego Union is reporting that a study shows that an increase in sin taxes on cigarettes will increase black market activity in cigarette sales. A rise of an additional $2 per pack would boost illegal, untaxed cigarette sales in the state of California by 39%. In light of these statistics, would you support the proposed $2 per pack increase on the state cigarette tax? If you'll go ahead with that. And
I would not support tax increases of any kind. We have a $96 billion budget. It's the biggest in history. We have to prioritize the current budget. Taxes are too high in California.
Matt?
You know, I've been in favor in cigarette taxes in the past. I don't know this exact measure. I'd have to see where the funds are going. In general, would say I'd probably be against it at this point.
I can tell you that the funds go to where they usually go to, which is to research and activities to stop individuals from smoking. That's the argument that's made for that. And that will be on the ballot, I believe, in November.
As Johnny Carson used to say, the last question, something like that. He used to get applause. If elected, how high on your agenda would gun control be? Matt?
It's a tough issue. I mean, when you look at the news on a weekly basis and you see the massacres that happen in movie theaters and elementary schools and now airports, and you look at the families that are torn apart and the communities that are devastated, I believe we have to, as a nation, I mean, it's obviously California, and I'm running for an office that will determine California laws, but as a nation, I hope we can, in a bipartisan way, enact gun laws that make sense, that prevent guns from getting in the hands of mentally ill people or criminals or people that shouldn't have them. And at the state level, I believe we have a responsibility to our citizens to make sure we're keeping them safe. I mean, public safety is one of the most immediate concerns of voters when I talk to them at the farmers markets and the local street fairs. And, you know, I would have supported a number of the measures that the last legislature enacted in terms of classifying certain weapons, in terms of limiting magazine size, in terms of background checks to make sure that mentally ill people, that make sure that criminals aren't getting guns. I don't have any desire to prevent legal gun owners from owning a weapon. I don't have any desire to prevent hunters or sportsmen from having weapons or being able to purchase weapons. I have a desire to stop incidents that we saw in Aurora and in an elementary school in Connecticut. And I think one of the biggest differences between me and my opponent is I believe in reasonable gun control measures, and that's why I've been proud to be endorsed by local law enforcement agencies, our sheriff, and really a bipartisan coalition of people that are concerned about gun violence. Now, I realize that gun laws aren't going to prevent all massacres or tragedies, and I realize that no law can do that. But if we can reduce magazine size or prevent someone mentally ill from getting a gun, and I'll either minimize, reduce, or prevent a tragedy and save lives, I think that's the responsibility of every legislature to take that seriously.
If you're concerned about public safety, the first thing that you should think about, and this would be high on my agenda, is to repeal AB 109, the prison realignment bill, which is releasing criminals into our communities, sometimes into halfway houses in residential neighborhoods. Because the governor did not want to alienate the prison guards union and send prisoners out of state to alleviate overcrowding. So that's the first thing. If you're concerned about public safety, let's look at the criminals and not the law-abiding gun owners. The law-abiding gun owners are not the problem. They're not what's making us less safe. They're making us more safe. My priorities would be economic growth, affordable energy, less regulation, an improved business climate. Gun control that's a, pardon the pun, a loaded term. We already have very strong gun control laws in California. Adding more to them does not make us safer. It's just burdensome on law-abiding gun owners, which is what the governor said when he vetoed the recent proposal to ban assault weapons in California. It was too great an infringement on the rights of law-abiding gun owners.
Thank you. Matt?
You know, I think Susan makes a lot of good points. You know, the realignment situation, economic growth, it doesn't address the question. She said on her website she doesn't believe in any gun controls. And just look at the massacres. Whether it was in the movie theater in Aurora, the elementary school in Connecticut, these weren't people that were released from a jail early. These are mentally ill people that had access to automatic or semi-automatic weapons with large magazines. Or the congresswoman that was shot in Arizona. So, if we're going to address the question, let's address the question.
Do I have time to address
Yes,
all?
yes.
Do I have time to address all of the mischaracterizations and
Susan, 1 minute,
untruths in his
please.
mailers?
Please,
I don't
if you
really.
would.
I can't really do that in 1 minute. I'll just say that I never said I was opposed to all state and local gun laws. That's absurd. He's referring in his mailers to an article that talks about the constitutional issue of whether there is an individual right in the state law in the state law to own a firearm. And the Supreme Court has said that there's an individual right under federal law, and it applies to the states through the 14th Amendment, the Heller decision and the McDonald decision. Well, I ran a little short in my opening, so I'll just tell you that I'll vote no on all of these proposals. I will keep them off the ballot. They will never threaten your home. All of these things that would make it easier to raise bonds and parcel taxes, all of these state constitutional amendments that would make the vote needed to pass bonds and parcel taxes 55% instead of 2/3, I vote no on all of them. They die in the assembly. They never make your property taxes go up forever. I will vote no. My opponent will not. I am in politics because things can be better in California. We have too much government control of our economy, and it's gradually stagnating and stagnating and stagnating. And this can be better. We can lower our energy costs by going back to the 20% renewable standard target instead of the 33%. It's like a tax cut for every business and resident. We can lower those DWP bills. We can lower the costs for business. We can do more with workers' comp to improve the business climate for California businesses. We can stop threatening to let everybody get sued out of business. The Affordable Care Act is causing a lot of people to be cut down to part-time. That's not helpful. And we have to do what we can to improve the business climate in California to counteract some of that. We should be treating our economy like an emergency in California and not like something that's off to the side. We are all concerned about environmental quality. We will always have a safety net, but we have to pay for these things. And if we don't have economic growth, we can't pay for them. And then we're handing the bill to our children. More bonds, more bonds, more bonds. What does that mean? It means more debt for kids to pay off so that they can't get their classes when they're in community college because all the money that's coming into the Treasury is going for debt service. It's not healthy. We can do better in California. I ask for your support. I ask for your support on November 19th. We can work together, we can solve problems, and I hope to do that. And thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Matt, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Quiet, quiet. Okay, settle down out there. All right, you have 2 minutes, Matt.
First, I want to thank my very worthy opponent over the last 6 months. She's been someone that's articulated her position as well. I also want to thank our moderators tonight and our hosts for doing this. They're obviously not getting paid to do this. For them to take their own personal time to be this engaged in our democratic process says a lot about them, so let's give them another hand. There's a big choice to be made next Tuesday, and I think it's a pretty clear one. I'm running not to be just a block and tackle legislator, as my opponent has said. I'm someone that wants to fix the problems in our community, make our state a better place, and improve people's lives. I agree with my opponent. We need to create a better economic climate in the state and build upon the growth of the last couple of years. That's why I've been endorsed by VICA, the leading business organization in the Valley. That's why I've been endorsed by the Cal Chamber, who supported my campaign. That's why I've been endorsed by a number of business leaders, some of the biggest job creators in the Valley, Howard Keys of Keys Motors, Sid Leibovich of Rodeo Realty, Edgar Escalante of Pequeno Moss. Understand that I'm going to help grow this economy. They're going to fight for regulatory reform. They're going to fight for reasonable CEQA reform that improves our economy but doesn't gut environmental law. You know, I'm also proud to be endorsed by the California Democratic Party, Governor Jerry Brown, my mentor and boss, Congressman Brad Sherman. But I'm also endorsed by Republican Councilmember Mitch Englander, who knows my work and knows that I want to work in a bipartisan way to get things done. By Councilmember Dennis Sine, an independent, who knows that I'm more concerned about problem solving than partisan politics. I'm proud also to have the support of hundreds of community leaders, many of the people which are in this room tonight supporting me. I look forward to working very hard in a bipartisan way to uphold the responsibility of being a state legislature, to make sure I'm working every day to improve people's lives. When I go back to my office tonight, there's going to be 10 or 15 young people, community college students, working for free, making phone calls, stuffing envelopes. They still believe that there's great things ahead in their future. They might have to drive to 3 campuses. They might have to take a semester off to earn money to pay for the next one. I want to work as hard for them in Sacramento to give them the opportunities I had so they can be the next generation of leaders and one day be on the stage. I ask for your vote on the 19th. I thank you for your support. And I look forward to working very hard on behalf of the Valley and our state.
Let's hear it for the candidates, folks.
Well, the Valley Regional Forum was formed to discuss substantive issues in community venues such as this. We had the rare opportunity tonight to look at two very high-quality candidates in a very important election. We thank all of you for coming out to hear this discussion, and please remember, vote.
Vote Tuesday, the 19th of November. That's not the 20th. If you show up on the 20th, you're too late. The 19th.
Find your polling place.
All right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, folks.
lavote.net/locator.